So with that, we'll hand it over to the speakers. We'll start in the same order. So Karan, if you want to go first, and Sarah and Matthew, and really, share a little bit with us what you're currently working on, and what has a mindfulness practice meant for you, not just in your work, but in your life collectively.
Jose, thank you. Really nice to see you all and reconnect with some old friends. So, this is definitely a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So co-founded Ginger coming out of school. And we are an on-demand mental health system. Think of it like a virtual clinic for your mental health care with a team of coaches and therapists and psychiatrists that are delivering care in all 50 states and now 35 countries in typically under 60 seconds, which for anybody who's tried to seek access to a therapist, for instance, and waited weeks or months is a pretty significant departure from sort of standard of care, if you will. And I think this topic is so critical. It's something I think, Jose, we chatted about in the past, just something that you don't really get trained about when you're in school, for sure, is so much of ultimately kind of our happiness is a function of our mindset and how we process our day-to-day events. And so as an entrepreneur, mindset is ultimately, it's your oxygen. It's how you stay focused. So it's something that I think a lot about. As now started the company in 2011, so it's going on almost a decade here, and how to keep evolving and kind of changing perspective along the way. And so I think the thing that I'm working a lot on, like I'm sure a lot of us, is how to flex in COVID. A lot of the sort of standard strategies and practices and kind of approaches I had have all gone out the window. Some of you may have heard as Matt and I were talking earlier, I have a 5-year-old daughter at home. And so making sure I can have a mindful practice for me oftentimes actually right now is just being there for her and being fully present when I'm with her. And we cook together. That's our thing. We do that almost every day. And cooking for me is actually a really, really powerful mindfulness practice. So I'll share more as we dig in deeper, but really nice to connect with y'all.
In next. First of all, coolest club ever. I loved getting the email about this, and definitely a topic I'm really passionate about as well. And it's fun to just reconnect with Karan and Matt. It's been a decade, so it's been a really long time. So I'm a partner at Pillar. We're an early stage venture capital fund in Boston, co-founded by 22 CEOs who've built big companies in Boston. And as Jose mentioned, I spent most of my career building companies and co-founded a leadership development company called Intelligently. And so, that experience of co-founding Intelligently and working with a lot of emerging leaders who were evolving and reflecting on themselves and, trying to grow in their own journeys, I think really impacted me coming into Pillar and thinking about the importance of investing in our founders and not just in their companies, but helping them grow. And so Jose mentioned the $5,000 CEO coach benefit we have, which can be used toward a CEO coach or toward therapy for our founders. And I think more than anything, it's something I personally believe in. Coaching has been a hugely powerful experience in my own life. And so, I think it's really important for me personally and for my partners that we extend that to the founders in our portfolio so that they have the chance to take advantage of that. But I think also the signal of just showing people by offering the credit that it's okay, that we expect you to want to grow and evolve. We expect you to not have all the answers. We expect you to seek out outside help. We expect you to potentially need therapy, want therapy, seek that out. Like, that's okay. That's part of why we put that in place. And then, you asked what am I focusing on right now from a mindfulness and leadership perspective? It's a struggle. I actually was I had anxiety thinking about coming to talk with this group today because I thought I'm kind of feeling down. I'm kind of falling down. I'm kind of failing on that front right now. And I think part of it for me is just carving out, I keep my coaching appointments on the calendar, even if I don't think I have something that I need to talk through with my coach, because the reality of just having that time carved out where I can talk to someone and reflect on how are things going? What's not working for me right now? Oftentimes I'm so caught up in the day-to-day that it's hard to find that time for self-reflection and self-awareness. And so at a minimum, that helps me create a moment and create space. And I do the same thing with like calendar invites for myself, where I just kind of invite myself to time for reflection. I think I have a breathing exercise I do every night to just like be in tune with my own breathing. And quite frankly, it's a response to anxiety because like I have a lot of anxiety right now. These are really tumultuous times. And so I think part of what I'm doing right now is trying to get by. And like Karan said, adjust to the new normal, find those experiences in life with friends, with family, with team, where I can be present and be thoughtful, and really just kind of be there with the people I'm with and with myself.
The third person, Matthew Bellows. Nice to meet you all. Honored to be invited here. And I've been meditating for a long time. I actually I transferred colleges to a college that was inspired by a Tibetan Buddhist meditation teacher, and graduated from there in 1992. And that's when my first class, actually, my first semester there was a meditation class. That was kind of I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, actually. And I've been more or less, meditating on and off ever since. And I definitely can relate to the theme of like, it's a difficult time. It's hard to carve out time and things are so chaotic in the world. I started, as Jose said, this is my third startup. It's called BodesWell. We're in open beta right now at bodeswell.io. It's basically digital financial planner. So our fundamental thesis behind the business is that if you remove the need to have another human being sitting across the table from you, asking you all your personal questions about your hopes and dreams and financial details and savings and how far you are towards retirement and all these awkward things, and just let you play around with scenarios on a computer the way you would play around with a video game, that will provide a new resource for the somewhat like 86 million American households that don't have a financial advisor, and allow people to think broadly and to get the access to the tactics and strategies for building a better, more healthy financial life. Before this, I started a company called Yesware, which is still in Boston and is about 100 people or so now, and is, the high level idea behind that from a business point of view was software for salespeople. We make software that helps salespeople be more successful. But the inner level of it was really about building a great place for people to work, and specifically building a company where it was okay to show up with your full authentic self. And so we're actually big clients of Intelligently because that was a leadership development program that really resonated with our philosophy about how professional life can also be a vehicle for personal development. Personally speaking, like I'm on a good streak right now with my meditation practice, which has not always been the case, but I'm meditating a lot these days. I don't know. I got this new practice I'm doing and a new teacher, and I went through a tough time with it a couple of years ago, and now I feel like I'm really back on track. So that feels good. Actually, I think I'm going to share a little bit with you coming up, so I'll save that for later, but it's really great to be here.
Awesome. And one thing about Yesware, Matthew's company, that caught my eye when I first walked in is they have this board where, most of the time you get referral, you get some bonus for yourself. They would give, I think it was a $5,000 referral to donate to your preferred cause. So I think that was like sort of like a shocker. I was like, I would want the money, or is it cool that you get to, select the cause to donate that money to? But that's just, I think, the level of detail on things that, Matthew and his team thought about in terms of what it meant to build a company, with people in mind.
Well, Jose asked me to guide a brief sitting meditation practice. So what I thought I would share is the sort of foundational practice that I've been doing all these years. It's called Shamatha Vipassana, or as many of you know, it's called mindfulness awareness. And the two sides of it, and we're going to we're going to start with mindfulness and we're going to go to awareness. But mindfulness is very much just the very basic ability to hold your attention to something. And what you'll find, as you probably know, is that when you try to do that, your mind runs off, and then you just sort of gently bring it back to the place where you're placing your mind, and then it runs off again, and then you gently bring it back. That's fine. The idea is not that like you need to get rid of all your thoughts and you should have this one perfect experience. The actual practice is in recognizing that your mind has wandered and gently bringing it back without being too mean to yourself. So that's the mindfulness. And then awareness is sort of the other side of that coin. Awareness is very much open and spacious and recognizing the world around us. And it particularly seeing clearly. So not seeing so much what we want to see, but seeing what's actually there. So there's a million different meditation practices from cooking to breathing at night, relax yourself, but this is sort of foundational meditation practices. So just to begin, if you could, sit in a comfortable position. If you are sitting, try not to lean back against your chair, but sort of sit forward so your back is supported by your hips. You can have your legs crossed in front of you, or if you're in a chair, just feet placed on the floor, whatever works for you. And you can have your eyes open or closed as you like. And I'm just going to, for a couple minutes, guide your attention around into different places. And so with my words, just move your attention to different parts of your body and your experience, and notice what your mind does in this circumstance. So maybe just to get started, just take a couple deep, slow belly breaths. Breathe in and feel your belly fill up with air. And pause a little bit when your belly is full, and then slowly breathe out. And pause for a second with your belly empty. And then slowly breathe in. On your own time, just do a few of those deep belly breaths and allow the motion of breathing this sort of exaggerated way to bring your awareness down from the thinking mind into the feeling body. Just give yourself permission to completely pay attention to the feeling of breathing this way. And then on your own time, allow your breath to return to its normal way. Now bring your awareness to the part of your body that's resting on the chair. Your hips, your buttocks. And just feel the weight of your body on the chair. See if you can feel your spine rising from that base, that strong, stable base of your hips. Your spine rises out of that base like a plant or a tree growing. Your spine has a natural curve to it. As it reaches the midpoint of your body, it curves back a little bit. And as you feel that curve, allow your heart to open up just a little bit. Your shoulder blades drop, relax. Your heart can open up a little more now. And now your spine is supporting your neck. Your neck has more room because your shoulders have relaxed. Your heart is opened. And move your awareness up your neck and into your jaw. Allow your jaw to be loose. Maybe your mouth opens a tiny bit. Maybe your teeth separate a little bit. Maybe your tongue is relaxed in your mouth. And allow your awareness to travel up to your cheeks. Your eyes. Can you let your eyes soften just a little bit? Let them relax a little bit. Give them a break. Give them permission to relax for a little bit. Your forehead. Can the skin on your forehead relax at all? And the skin on the top of your head? What does that feel like? If you find you're holding tension in the top of your head, just give yourself permission to let that go. And at the very, very top of your head, right where the little swirl of hair comes out at the top of your head, you can imagine a golden string that comes out. And imagine just hanging off that golden string. The golden string is attached to something way high in the sky. It runs down through the center of your spine all the way down to the base. Just imagine for a moment hanging off that golden string and everything else around it just relaxing. Okay, so that's the mindfulness part. You've held your attention to different parts of your body, and now your body is just hanging off this golden string. And now gently open your eyes, if your eyes are closed. And see the world around you. But don't just see it, feel it. Hear it. Just be there in the world. If you find your attention wandering, just gently bring it back to this present moment, to the world that you see, the world you live in. Now, you can bow to each other if you want to end the session. And that's it. We meditated.
Well, thank you, Matthew, for leading that. So what we'll move to next is the Q&A. So as we mentioned, if you have a question for any of the speakers or all three of them, please do raise your blue hand and then we'll call people out one by one. But I'll start off with a question that I'm really curious to see what you all say, especially in the entrepreneurial landscape. There's this environment, right? This culture of do more now. In fact, like I think you can buy t-shirts, right, that sell for I don't know how much. They're like, do more now, entrepreneurship, let's go, hustle, hustle. So, and I'm guilty of that. Even right now I was feeling that. So I'm curious, like, how do you, like what does that mean? How should we handle that, especially as entrepreneurs where we're potentially creating these environments for ourselves? I think entrepreneurs kind of own the responsibility of creating that within their companies. Like, how do you manage that? How might you counterbalance that felt sense of do more now? Like, how do you personally relate to that? And how is that the right path forward? This notion of do more now.
I'm happy to kick us off. And Matt, I feel like I need to bring you along to every panel I ever do. This is great. I feel really centered. So thank you.
I don't want to ever do another panel again.
I know. There goes the anxiety. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, and some of you may have heard me talk about this, but I remember coming out to school and just getting sucked up into what I like now call the cult of the startup. And what I also realized was also like the cult of the business school student or experience. And it was this always on, always gunning like expectation. And that I then sort of laid that on myself, was that was the way you operate, or that's the way I operated. And so I was very much guilty in the early days of Ginger, was letting it consume any and all time that I gave it. And sometimes to the detriment of like close friends and family and other people and other priorities. Not sometimes, certainly. And in like 2014, 2015, I read this book called Essentialism. The byline is the disciplined pursuit of less but better. And I couldn't think of a better way to describe like the antithesis of the do more now. And like that coupled with my daughter, who's now 5. So I marked like, we went through a big company pivot 5 years ago now. We kind of evolved from being a technology platform into actually becoming a licensed medical provider and delivering care. And those things all happened kind of roughly around the same time. And I started to rewire my priorities. And I started to appreciate that so many of those were like externally facing. And if like the antithesis of the cult of the startup was what I now call like you do you. And it's very much of like what a mindfulness practice is, you know, it's regardless of some sort of stimuli or triggers or responses, you know, like tomorrow is going to be an incredibly intense day, and frankly, probably weeks or maybe even months with the election. And it's like one of those situations where like, I can't control it, but I can control how I respond to it. And so that's probably been the single most important sort of like foil to that mantra, which feels like is what you get indoctrinated, or what I got indoctrinated in when I came to school, when I started in the startup land. And Matt has and Sarah both have the advantage of having kind of a couple of adventures now under their belt. Like I feel like I've gone through a few just in this one company alone. And so that's something that I think a lot about. And I think a lot about how do I create boundaries so that no matter what is happening externally, I'm creating space and prioritizing that. And I'm not caring as much about these other voices. And it's hard because I know I have this like constant tendency to compare. And so the last thing I'd say is a mindfulness practice I found is really valuable. And for me personally, it's been insufficient to ultimately creating working on my mental health like I do my physical health. And so maybe Sarah, like you were describing with the coach and sort of creating this space or holding a container to have that conversation, I often realize I need someone besides myself and besides my spouse or my partner, you know, my close friends or who it is, like someone who's very objective to reflect with. And so I have a group of entrepreneurs, kind of similarly, one of our early investors, True Ventures, they sponsored it's kind of like a YPO, Young Presidents Organization, for other startup founders. And there's a cohort of 8 of us. We've been together now for 6.5 years. We meet once a month, and it's 4 hours with an external facilitator, and we talk. And you don't miss it no matter what happens. And having that sort of practice, just like a mindfulness practice, I found has been so powerful because it's just meant there's an external set of people who can hold me accountable even without holding me accountable, make me hold myself accountable on things that I want to do. And those things are oftentimes outside of work, frankly. So long answer, short question, but I think it's the less but better is what's helped me.
I'll jump in on this too. I really struggle with this, like so much. One of the things I work on actively with my coach is that I have an achiever-oriented personality. So I am wired to want to achieve, and then I achieve and I become very lonely and sad because it's not actually fulfilling to achieve things because you're constantly in search of whatever is next. And so I think that, you know, like you said, sometimes it's helpful to talk about that with someone else. And sometimes it's helpful to talk about what you're feeling and experiencing with someone else because it gives you a very different perspective on you know, whatever situation you're moving through at that moment in time. And so I think that's been really important for me. I think learning that no one else can do that for you. You know, I have partners that would love to see me continue to achieve. They're like, if you want to keep doing things, you know, like, and so, you know, what kind of mental space you need, and you know, where you're in a healthy spot or not. And someone else can't know that for you. They can be helpful. You know, I try to watch out for this on my team. I have a team member who has not been creating enough of that space for herself recently. And I had to say to her last week, like, stop, pause. You think you're doing more, but you're actually doing less because you're not present. You're actually checking things off a list. You're not thinking about them. You're not like really bringing yourself and your mind to what you're doing because you're burnt out. And like, so it's sometimes easier for someone else outside of you to say that to you, but you can't rely on that. I'm going on vacation tomorrow through Friday, where I'm not going anywhere because it's hard to go somewhere these days, but I'm burnt out, and I didn't do that for myself. I pushed myself to my breaking point and didn't create enough of that space for awareness and rest and recharging. And I'm now in a place that's very unhealthy, and I can't bring myself to my team. I can't bring myself to my family members. And I happened to last week have a lot of personal tragedy in my family. And it was hard for me to like bring myself to my family and give enough of myself as I would have wanted to my family, because I don't have the mental space for it right now. And so like, you think you're doing more, and then you get into a moment where you realize like, actually I'm not. I am doing less thinking that I'm doing more.
Yeah, I'll just quickly build on that because I agree with what Sarah and Karan said wholeheartedly. There are times, obviously, both in school, especially graduate school, and work, where you have to work hard. Like, there's just no way around it. There's a lot to do, and there's a short period of time. And if stuff's going to get done, you have to do it. So, like, not to downplay the reality of that situation, but more and more, I find that it's the quality of what I do that's much, much more important than the amount, and the quality of my interactions that's much, much more important than the work that the research or the spreadsheets or the writing that I do. Especially when you are, leading teams or running teams, people really look to the manager or the director or the leader for signals about how it's going. And the role of that person, which I think you all find yourselves in, no matter what you're working on, is very much, doing work, but guiding how we're doing and helping people realize that, like, we're in a good spot, or we're working on this, or this is a problem, or, that's what leadership is in a way, is showing up to be yourself and helping the whole team succeed. So it's very hard to do that when you're pulling all-nighters to fix the spreadsheet or fix the slide presentation at the same time.
I'll make one comment, Sarah, based on what you said last session. We had a speaker that recommended Why Buddhism is True, which is a book that talks a little bit on some of the biology for why we pursue. And it was really interesting. It talks something along the lines of our brain fakes us into thinking that we're going to love the goal once we achieve it, so that we kind of build momentum to doing it. And then we get there and we get that dissatisfaction. And then our brain comes up with the next thing. So it was like a really interesting, I need to pay attention. So I wanted to recommend that book as well for folks. But I think we do have a question from Seamus. So if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask, and definitely, again, raise your hands, folks, or add questions here on the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Jose, and thank you, all three of you, for for being here. I'm curious, I think a lot of us on this call either have some sort of mindfulness practice, or the fact that we're here shows we kind of value mindfulness. But I think what many of us have less experience in is being a leader in an organization. And I'm curious, for the three of you as leaders, what your thoughts on how kind of managers and leaders can encourage mindfulness practices with the people they manage in a way that is accessible but not kind of mandated or push on people. And I know Sarah mentioned kind of giving money to founders or employees, but I'm curious what other strategies beyond just money exist to try to foster mindfulness in your employees.
I loved what Matthew said about like people are looking to you as a leader, and that you're leading by example, whether you know it or not. So I think, you know, sharing what you're doing, what works for you in a way that's not pressuring others to feel like they need to do the same, but also introducing them to other leaders. You know, I think on any team, it's very hard oftentimes to get exposure to anyone outside your organization or your core team, because you are heads down working and focused on that one thing that you're building or doing. And I just think it's a tremendous gift to expose your team to other people, other leaders potentially outside your organization, and the things they're doing to evolve themselves and grow themselves in their mindfulness practices. And so I think that's one good way to introduce your team to those ideas.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think I'll just add a few things. So much of it is about modeling the right behavior so others see, and explicitly calling it out. Like, you know, I block out this time for my these you know, kind of forum sessions with the other entrepreneurs, and I'm open about it with my team that this is kind of sacred time, and I don't schedule over it no matter what. I explicitly block out, you know, mental health days or other days of the week where I need to unplug, and I encourage my team to do the same thing. If I see, you know, people who, you know, like for instance, sending notes, it's hard right now, especially with COVID, because we're all working at like different times of the day, and I've broken my rule of like working in the evenings, which I usually just never do. But I've been trying to be more explicit with my teams to talk about how it's not an expectation I see, and I use things like send later so that to make sure that, you know, things aren't getting sent at off times. And I think the last thing I'd say is COVID is a unique opportunity. There's obviously a lot of challenges with it, but one of the advantages has been we're all, for better or for worse, in each other's lives in a deeper way. It's just it's more intimate, whether you like it or not. And as a result, you kind of see a lot of the messy middle. And in some ways that's really powerful, because it means you could just be honest about the fact that even if you're the, you know, leader of a company and you might be dealing with childcare situations or a loved one who's sick or you know, having a rough go. And so, you know, you gotta obviously strike a balance. People want to see that their leaders are confident, but also that they're real and they're honest, and that sort of realness and authenticity actually goes a long way. And that is some of this. It's like, you know, there's struggle, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's better to be real about it, name it and call it out, and find the right ways to do it. But I found that doing that in some ways in public settings, so you can set the right culture and context, and in some ways in individual settings, so you can protect an individual's privacy, but you can ask them if they need help. Because sometimes people just don't know, and they don't know where to go or who to turn to, and they don't realize that maybe a mindfulness practice or access to a mental health provider or someone could actually go a long way in helping them at a time of need.
Awesome. So I think we'll let Claire ask her question. I know we're coming up on time, so I'll move to you, Claire. But just in spirit of this, Matthew Bellows also is going to be leading a few meditations with us on Fridays from 1 to 1:30. So just wanted to do that plug-in. It's kind of like, as a community, what do we do for one another? And so I'll share the screen real quick if you want to take a screenshot of this, but we'll also put it up on Sloan groups. But each of these 30-minute sessions will be focused on the senses. And so if you want to join us, that's hopefully a way, Seamus, that we can kind of get additional practices. And, you know, here's a good opportunity to invite folks, especially if you're already starting your company and whatnot. So with that, Claire, I'll pass it over to you for your question.
Thanks, Jose. So yeah, my question is coming from this place of acknowledging that mindfulness is helpful as a founder in like helping you navigate those low lows and also those high highs and kind of maintain perspective. But at the same time, it feels like sometimes it's hard to celebrate those wins. So I'm just curious if any of you have practices or mindfulness techniques around celebrating wins, especially in the early days of launching a company where it just feels like there's always, you know, more that you could do or more that you could achieve.
And Claire is in her early days. She just finished Delta V. So probably get the caveat with that. She is starting her company at this very moment.
I mean, celebrating wins is a mindfulness practice. So just doing it is a big step in the right direction. And it's because actually what you're saying to the team is like, we did it. This is important. Pause just for a moment, hold off on that thing that Sarah talked about, which is like, what's the next one? And just pause and let's all recognize that we achieved this thing together. So I don't think there's any particular technique that you need to do so much as just make sure that carve out that time and extend the boundary of the good feeling and the accomplishment and the win for you know, for at least half an hour before you go on to the next thing.
I completely agree. Just like do it. So many founders just don't do it. They just blow past it. And that's so deflating for the team not to stop and celebrate those milestones. I think in COVID times, we've seen people, you know, companies have Slack channels to celebrate wins and people can share each other's wins. We have people doing like remote parties or events where they set aside an hour as a team to celebrate, you know, that month's or that quarter's wins, and they ship something out to everybody so that they all can celebrate together on a Zoom call. There are virtual gongs now, but just like anything, like just acknowledging it is huge.
Yeah, Claire, it's such a great question. The only thing I'd add is, for me, it's kind of been reframing the goalposts. So it's sort of enjoying the grind and realizing that it's not this sort of end outcome, you know, acquisition, IPO thing that's like way downstream. It's like all the small stuff along the way that actually is huge. And actually that's the game. Like high likelihood it's not going to work out, but it's actually all the stuff along the way that's actually going to feel most meaningful and most powerful. And so we have this practice, we call it ginger snaps. Like, you know, you snap someone, you recognize someone for what they've done, but so much of it is actually doing that for yourself. So, you know, it's minor, but I have this like gratitude jar, if you can see that thing there, which I used to, you know, it's funny, I'm in this space, I think about this and do talk about mental health all the time, but I myself wasn't doing, you know, enough to really appreciate. And so I just have like before I go to bed, I have a paper and pencil, I write down 3 things and I just put one in the jar. And it's such a small thing, and it could be work related, it could be otherwise, but has gone such a long way in just keeping me centered and grateful. And it's, you know, and I'm open about it, and so other people in the team have started to adopt versions of it. And frankly, I pulled it from someone else who was doing it. So, but I just find that that's one way to start to break out this big rock, because that rock's going to take a long time to move.
Awesome. Well, I know we're coming close on time, but Mal, we'll let you ask your question. And if the speakers can stay a little bit afterwards, I know we have one more in the chat. But I think, Matthew, when you said celebrating the win is the mindfulness, I was like, what the heck? It is that easy. So it's just kind of like, it doesn't have to be anything grandiose. And I'm guilty of not doing that. So thank you for that. Mal, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the organizers for organizing this, and also the speakers. Thank you for taking this time. So I just have a question about what would you recommend for like managing your time and prioritizing your tasks. So I would imagine as leaders, you all have a really crazy schedule, and have you found anything that like with mindfulness, does it help you with prioritizing your tasks and then managing your time more rationally and more more efficiently? Thank you.
I'll jump in just and share a couple of things that work for me. So when I started at our firm Pillar, I told my partner, Jamie, I will never take a meeting before 9:30 a.m. So it's a big deal if we have a meeting before 9:30 a.m. Like it has to get approval. Like we have to have a conversation about it. And the reason is because I have to get a morning workout in. Like I will not come to work in a good headspace. And in my last role, I started to let that slip, and I let my health slip. And then, you know, my mental health started to slip too. And so I realized that was a huge priority. And then that just feeds into everything else I do that day, that week, and it becomes like a domino effect. So for me, just creating something like that is a boundary and it's untouchable unless we have a conversation and there's a reason to change it. And then I do the same thing with carving out blocks of time that are solely for like thinking, reflection, for prioritizing, for thinking about strategy, where I don't book any meetings, and those are on the calendar every single week and they're untouchable. And if I start to touch them and put a half an hour here or half an hour there, then the whole thing ends up going away. So I have to be really diligent about not touching those blocks of time for deep thinking.
How much time do you block out each week for that? That's really cool.
Not enough.
Yeah.
So usually it's about like 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours that I maintain on the calendar where there are like definitely no meetings. That doesn't mean like I end up having plenty of other time on the calendar where I don't have meetings, but they're like not available. Those times are like not available to book anything. They're only just for thinking and planning and reflecting.
Yeah, so I love that. I have struggled on the calendar management front. That was going to be my response. And there's a pre-COVID response and a COVID response. In COVID, the thing that I think has been working more is I just need that deep think time. So it's like 4 hours like together so I can get through that like one big thing for the week. And so that's actually what Fridays have become for me. They tend to be lighter and less internal meetings. So I block them every week. I recognize that everyone can do something like that, but it's been really helpful to just create some space for stuff that piles up that I can then go deep on and keeps me honest to prioritize things that matter the most. And I'm so sorry, I was scheduled back to back, so I'm gonna have to drop off here. But really, really nice to meet you all. And would love to stay in touch and be helpful if I can. I'm just Karan at ginger.io. And Matt and Sarah, so good to see you both again.
So good to see you.
Matthew, do you have a final comment on that? Because we are on time. I'm going to give you a final words here.
It's a super hard problem, and it's not like a one solution. I think it's more like a journey, depending on where you're at in your life and what's going on. But I think you're right to think about it and to be mindful of your choices and your priorities. Just taking a little bit of time at the start of every day works for me, where I think about like, what do I want to do today? What do I have to do today? What's important to get done today? That helps me prioritize a little bit, as opposed to just jumping right into the first task that comes up.
Awesome. Well, I know we had a few people drop off now, but the recording will be made available to everyone afterwards. So thank you everyone for joining, Matthew, Sarah, and Karan. Super thankful to have you, and glad you all had an opportunity to see one another after a few years. So thank you everyone for joining. We'll go ahead and send a survey, so please fill that out as soon as you get a chance. And we'll be in touch for our next event.
Thanks for having us. This is so cool.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
See ya.
See you. Bye.
Bye.